Welcome back to the Malloy Twins podcast, and there's three things different about today's episode. Number one, I'm outside. It's sunny in Dublin for a change, so I said we might as well make the most of the good weather while it's here and make sure I get out and at least get a little bit of sun on this skin whilst it's there. Second thing, I'm on my own. There's no lead today, there's no Malloy Twins, it's Malloy Twin only, but hopefully you're in good hands. And number three, there's no guest. It's just me, it's a solo episode, and it's going to be a Q&A that we got from the Instagram stories. So thank you to everyone who dropped in a question, but I want to make sure that this episode is actually fun, valuable, you enjoy listening to it, and hopefully get something out of it. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to set a timer on my phone. We're just going to go for 20 minutes. I'm going to rattle through the questions as much as possible. And once that timer goes off, we'll end, and that will be that. All right, so no messing. Let's get straight into it. I'm going to set the timer now. We'll go for 20. And let's go. So, first question. Do you do comedy? No, we do not. At least not formally. We might make the odds shit joke that both of us find funny, but from a formal sort of stand on stage, stand-up stuff, no, nothing I've ever even really thought of doing, to be honest. But on the flip side, it is something that I've definitely grown a lot more respect for over the last little while. Partially from just listening to Joe Rogan and some of the comedians he does have on the show. But I used to, I don't know if you were the same, but I used to think if someone's into comedy or does comedy, they were just those kids in school who are naturally funny and they just, I don't know, say stuff in certain ways or maybe can do accents really well, and so that's just their thing. But the more I've been listening to it, it seems like there's much more thought, like it's a much more creative process as opposed to just jumping on stage and going with the flow and seeing what happens. So from that perspective, like my respect for comedians and comedy as a whole has grown so much the last few months, and I'll never say never, but no plans at the minute. Okay, second question, something nobody knows about you. Now, I don't want to answer for Lee and start revealing some of his deep dark secrets, so I'll leave Lee to the side, but for me specifically, there actually is something that is kind of an interesting story that I've never told on the podcast, purely because it never really came up, and like I just never felt the need to go into it or to talk about it. But it is a bit of a mad one when I think back on it and just that day and the experience as a whole. So back in 2021, I think it was, I was living in London with my girlfriends for a job that I was doing over there with a business that basically coached personal trainers and helped them with business development and stuff like that. But anyways, as I was in London, I was living there. My girlfriend was in the acting scene at the time, so she was trying to establish herself as an actress and follow that dream. So she was kind of clued into what maybe shows were looking for actors, roles, like what was up for auditions at the minute, etc. That whole stick. And basically caught wind of the fact that The Apprentice were looking for candidates to audition to be on the next season of the show. And it was a show that me and my girlfriend actually watched during the evenings when it was on at that time, so it was like top of mind. So when I seen it, I was like, you know what? I'll give it a bash. So I filled out the application, heard back anyways, got invited for the actual in-person auditions. Went in that day and it was madness, to be honest. I'd never seen anything like it. There was a queue of people, like from the building down the road. I don't know, there must have been at least 100, 150 people there, and this was at like 8:30 on a Saturday morning in some posh part of London. But anyways, got there, queued up, got through the first round of the interview, which was kind of just you sit down, kind of like I am here across from someone else, and you've sent in a CV and some material and all the rest, so that was handy enough. Got through that. Then I was waiting around for like 2 hours to get to the next part of the interview, and that's when shit kind of hit the fan a little bit. So if I just backtrack for a second, right? From watching the show The Apprentice, and I actually have a bit of a bone to pick with The Apprentice as a whole off this, because I feel like I was misled. So even if you hear the title, The Apprentice, right? I don't know about you, but my understanding is that if you're looking for an apprentice, you're looking for someone to come and work under you, shadow you, to learn from you, so that in the future you can take more load off of your mentor's plate, let's call it, and they can be freed up to do other stuff. All right, so that's the image of an apprentice I have in my mind. Like if someone goes to do an apprenticeship as a carpenter, yeah, they go, they work with a company, they're the apprentice, they get trained up, then they become like qualified, they go do the job, and the boss gets to take a bit of a backseat and focus on other stuff, right? So that was the mindset I was going in. I was like, I'm going to be Alan Sugar's right-hand man. Like I'm going to be his go-to guy. He's getting a little bit older, you know, he's maybe looking to take a step back from the business stuff. That's my opportunity. Let me step in there and take it off his plate from him, you know, step in. So anyways, that was my mindset going into it. And I wanted to like put my best foot forward to do it. So anyways, got to the next round of the interview. Sat in this boardroom, I suppose you could call it, with like, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 other men sitting across from me and I was just on that side of the table. And basically, as soon as I sat down, they're like, right, so Adam, what's your business idea? And I was like, don't have one. And they were just kind of like shocked for a second. They were like, what do you mean you don't have one? Like, do you understand The Apprentice and what we're here to do? And like, you're supposed to come with a business plan and a business idea for us to go through to see if it's a fit to bring onto the show. And I was like, lads, I don't have a business. Like, I have no business idea. I have no business plan. I was hoping to come here to get on the show so I could become Alan Sugar's apprentice and step into his businesses. No, they were like, no, that's not how it works. The show basically works. You come with a business plan. Everyone in here who's sitting out there waiting has their business and what they want to receive investment for. We pick the ones we think have the most opportunity to come be part of the show, and then they go through the process, and at the end, Lord Sugar picks the one who he thinks he wants to work with or whatever else, and they get an investment from him to help grow their business. And I was like, right, fair enough, my bad. But secondly, that's not an apprentice. That's just you looking for an investment opportunity, man. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And it even started getting me thinking then of like, as I'm watching the show, I'm just thinking to myself, all this crap that they're making the contestants do, like run around and just try sell shit to strangers and like make a bit of TV out of it, does that even really matter? Because someone could be like really good at that stuff, but if you still think their business idea is shit and there's no opportunity, you're not going to invest in them. So you could just string them along for the whole show because they're good TV and then just, you know, throw them out at the end. Versus on the flip side, someone who's maybe not so good on TV, isn't the greatest candidate, but their business idea seems like the best one and where the most return on investment could be, you're probably just going to pick them anyways. So like, what's the whole point of this TV show? Is all a facade? And anyways, that was the taste in my mouth I had leaving that place. Was, I think this is a bit of a scam, to be honest with you, or something, I don't know. But anyways, that was my experience doing that. And then after that whole interaction, it was clear to me I wasn't going to be one of the ones who are picked for the show, right? That was quite evident given the fact that I didn't have one of the most important requirements to be on it. But they still asked me to stick around and go to the next round. So I done that, and again, I was probably waiting another, I don't know, hour and a half, 2 hours just in this lobby, and it felt like being in a hospital waiting room because you're not allowed to talk to anybody. You have your phones, you can be scrolling on that, but like, you're just literally sitting in a chair waiting for your name to be called out. It was kind of a waste of a day, to be honest. But anyways, then on the final round, again, similar sort of vibe went in. It was just one lady I was sitting across from this time, and this was the piece I think where she was looking for who could make good content or a good candidate to be on television, that sort of thing. So she was just trying to, like, I don't know, have conversation. She was recording it, trying to get you to, like, I don't know, show a bit of personality and stuff. Like, she was asking you to do, like, what's your party trick if someone asks you to do something mad and all these things, you know. And anyways, got through that, got the bus home or the train home, and I was like, yeah, that was an experience. And obviously, I've never spoken about it before just because nothing came of it, nothing happened, and it was, you know, never brought up in a podcast, so that's the first time I mentioned it. But that's something that I'd say nobody except my girlfriends, maybe my family, know about me, so now you know. All right, next question. What are some good books that you recommend? So I did know in advance this was one of the questions, so I actually dragged some out of the depths of underneath my bed where there's a whole pile of shit that is a story for another day. But there's 3 books that I'm going to stick out. The first one is really top of mind because I literally just recommended it to somebody yesterday. It's one that I was recommended by a good friend, mentor of mine, and it's kind of about leadership, but I'll expand on it in a second. It's this one here. It's called Leadership and Self-Deception by the Arbiter Institute. And basically what I really like about that one is I don't know about you, right, but if I just be open and honest for a second, a lot of my life I would get pissed off very easily when people would either just not do things the way I wanted them done, even though I hadn't said how I wanted them done in the first place. You know, could be like somebody has to, I don't know, just use a simple example at home. You want someone to make the bed in a certain way, and you don't tell them what way you like the bed being made. You don't specify exactly what way you want it done. And then they do it, and it's not up to the standard you wanted it done. So you're pissed off with them because they didn't do it the way you wanted it to be done, even though you didn't tell them how you wanted it done in the first place. Are you with me? Does that make sense? So, like, a lot of situations like that in personal life, professional life, all those things. And so that book was a really nice way for me to, like, look at situations, to actually understand that You know, sometimes that shit is on you. It's not the other person. And sometimes when people do things wrong or incorrect, it's not that they're just doing it to like piss you off or frustrate you. It might just be that they didn't know how to do it properly. Or maybe they have other shit going on for them that's contributing to it. And you're not helping the cause by being like that, you know? So I just found it really helpful, especially I think if you're someone who's in maybe a leadership position in work or anything like that, or even if you're not, just from like a personal level, like connecting with people, building relationships, I think it helps a lot. So that's the first one. Second one is one that I'm reading at the minute, but I'm enjoying it so far, so I said I'll throw it in there, is this. It's called The Art of Happiness. It's by the Dalai Lama and Howard C. Cutler. And basically what it is Howard Cutler is interviewing the Dalai Lama on happiness. What is happiness? And the reason why I mention it is because, again, don't know about you, but as I was growing up, I just had this thing in my head that like, you're either happy or you're not. You're either born someone who's a happy, positive person, or you're someone who's a negative person. And then as I've gone through different things and, you know, researched different areas and all the rest, I no longer believe that. I think that to an extent you might be more hardwired, more prone to like go in one direction or the other. But to a certain extent you can teach yourself, coach yourself, work on yourself to become more positive and a happier person as a whole, right? And so that book I just found a really nice way of like looking at ultimately the art of happiness. What is happiness? It's not just pleasure. It's not just, you know, getting a spice bag makes me happy, so I'm going to get a spice bag every day, you know, because that's not going to make you happy in the long term. It's going to lead to all sorts of shit you probably don't even want to deal with. So it's like understanding happiness from a more realistic perspective and what goes into it, and understanding that just because you want to be happy doesn't mean that there's never any discomfort or there's never any pain. Like those are all just normal parts of life. But happiness is something ultimately that you can work towards becoming more of. And it's a choice at the end of the day. And the more you work on it and the more you commit to following through with it, I suppose, the more you can make that your reality. And then last but not least, definitely, because this is probably the book I've enjoyed reading the most over the last, I'd say, 5 years. It's a big boy. It's called The Creative Act. And it's by Rick Rubin. If you've ever listened to Rick Rubin on podcasts, he's been on all the big ones. Rogan, Huberman, Modern Wisdom, you name it, he's probably been there. He might still be, I don't know, like a producer, so he's worked with the likes of Kanye West and all sorts of big name bands, musicians, etc. But that book, I think, for me, just helped me understand, like, what does it mean to be creative? Because I think, again, similar to the happy thing, I would have always thought people are either creative or they're not, like people fit into boxes. And that's not quite true. I think everyone has a creative element. I think part of human nature comes with a creative condition. You know, you need to be creative. If it wasn't for creativity, none of the stuff I'm surrounded by now would exist. You know, this camera, this table that's sitting on, the chairs, all that stuff, right? So like, all of us have a need for creativity, but I think we kind of hear the word be creative and you think going to like color a picture or draw something or, you know, get a canvas and paint. It's like, that's forms of creativity, but creativity can exist in everyday life. It's like taking a different route to work. It's like ordering something different in your coffee shop, making a dinner that you've always made, but maybe spice it up a little bit, doing something different, you know. And from that book especially speaks to this big idea that creativity is about the act, it's not about the outcome. So just making something, like for example, me making this podcast, right? If I was just making this podcast thinking to myself, what kind of episode could I make, or what could I say that's going to make everyone really love this podcast and make it go viral? It's not really me being creative, because I'm trying to constrain and manufacture an outcome. Creativity is about, let me just jump on and see where it goes, and like have a structure, like not just wing it, but at the same time, like enjoy the process. Let it flow, you know, let it come. And then whatever the outcome is, cool. You know, if it goes viral, happy days. If no one ever listens to it other than me man, my girlfriend, cool, happy days. You know, it's like, it's about the process. And the more you can focus on the process and the work you want to create, generally, the best outcome is going to be out there at the end. But it's not always the case. And sometimes it flops and it doesn't work. But as long as it's something that you've been able to stand over and say, you know what, I just enjoy the process of making that, you tend to find that the flops or the poor results don't hurt as much. It's when you try to do something with the intention of achieving an outcome, of like, I'm going to try and make this podcast and just say whatever I think is going to get the best results, and then it doesn't. Those are the ones that really sting, because not only do you not get the results, but you know, you kind of sacrificed a bit of yourself in the process of doing it, and that's what really stings the most. So there are the 3 books that I can recommend. Okay, next. How do you deal with the voice in your head that says you're not good enough? How do I deal with them? I think the way I deal with it now is different to how I would have dealt with it in the past. In the past, I would have ignored it, definitely, or just tried to like pretend it didn't exist, you know, even though clearly did. Like, it was in my head, and it's like 2 voices in my head going back and forth at each other. My other hand is occupied petting the dog at the minute, so that's why I'm having to go across too. But yeah, it's like, you're not good enough. Yeah, I am good enough. Shut up, you know, like that back and forth sort of stuff. And that never works, never long term. Like, you always just feel like you're faking it. What really changed for me was when I joined a business mentorship when I was 20, I think, when I started personal training, and I was in a room with, I don't know, about 30, say, other business owners, men, women, ranging from, I was the youngest in the room, I was 20, I think the next youngest was like 30, say, so ranging from 30 up until 50, 60 years of age, so like a wide range of people, backgrounds, successes. Some of these people doing multiple 6 figures a year in their business, and I was just literally starting off in my business, so I was doing fuck all. And every single person on that mentorship, like, they'd go around the room, they'd ask you like, what's your goals, what's your challenge, you know, this sort of stuff, and pretty much every single person said it in a different way, but it was the same thing. It was like, what's stopping you from being where you want to be? And they'd put different words around it in different language, but ultimately it was some internal resistance they had to say, oh, but what if it doesn't work? You know, what if it fails? That like fear of failure, that voice in the head that's saying, that won't work. No one's going to buy that. That's too expensive, whatever it might have been. Like, that internal voice, that limiting belief that holds them back. And so I think for me, what really helped me kind of deal with it and just be able to move past it is understanding that it's normal. Everyone has it, but at the end of the day, like, you can either choose to be defined by it, or you can choose to have it, acknowledge it, and move forward anyways. And so that's what really helped me get past it, is accepting. It's like, yeah, cool, it's there, I understand it, it's there for a reason, it's probably trying to keep you safe, but that's not what I want. Like, I don't want to live a life defined by what that voice in my head says is acceptable, I am good enough for, only to get to the end of my life and then have to look back and say, but what if, you know, that will kill me. So that's what helped me get past it. Hopefully it can help you too, but I think even just understanding that it's normal, everyone has it, helps a lot. All right, we are running short on time. We've got 3 more minutes, so let's see what else we can get through. What's the most woo-woo thing you believe in, and why? All right, cool. Just in case anyone doesn't know what it means when someone says woo-woo, I only know this because someone explained it to me not too long ago. But woo-woo basically just means a little bit like weird or out there. You know, like some people would say, you know, the book The Secret, that law of attraction, that's woo-woo. Or like meditation and journaling and fucking jumping in an ice bath, that's woo-woo. You know, it's like, there's probably not a lot of, or maybe there is, science or, you know, widespread common knowledge of like why it works or how it works, but there's just this thing about it that you believe in. I don't really have too many, to be honest, but I think the one that jumps to mind that I'll mention is I have got a belief that nothing is good or bad. Our perception or perspective on it makes it so. And if you ever heard the Chinese farmer story, I actually heard it off Dan Bilzerian for the very first time years ago on a podcast, sitting on the 13 on my way into DCU to go to, I don't know, a lecture for my second year of college, whatever it was. And it's stuck with me ever since. And I've heard a few people mention it since. But the Chinese farmer story, I haven't got time to tell you the story, but YouTube it if you haven't heard it. It's a really good one. But it's basically this sort of concept that any individual single moment in that moment could be good or could be bad. Like, you get a spice bag, let me say again, good moment. You get news that your partner has, I don't know, had an injury, bad news. You get told that you're off school tomorrow as a kid, best news ever. You get told that Christmas is cancelled because you're on the bad list and Santa's bringing you a bag of coal, bad news. You know, like, any individual thing at that moment could be good or bad. But bigger picture in the wider perspective, bad things can lead to really good things, And similarly, good things can lead to really bad things. And so your perspective on things and kind of what you do at that moment defines whether it was good or bad, more so than that exact thing. And it's not to say you won't have moments where you're heartbroken, you're devastated, you're frustrated, you're upset, you're angry. Like, those things exist. But in the bigger picture and on like the broader scope of stuff, any individual moment by its nature is not inherently good or bad. It's kind of what you do with that moment moving forward. And if I give an example, because I was talking about it recently, COVID for me, when COVID hit, I was a personal trainer, pretty much full time in the gym. Whatever number of hours were in a week, I would work with clients, like that was my thing, that was my business. I was also finishing off final year of college at that time. And then COVID hits, and now all of a sudden I go from having a business that's fully in person, fully online, or fully in person with nothing online, to no business, And then it's like, shit, what do I do now? And so that moment is a bad moment, right? It's like, I've just lost my business basically overnight. No reason, no fault of my own, but now I can't work with clients. I can't make money. What do I do? So in that moment, shit, up there with, at least at this stage of life, one of the worst things that can happen. But on the flip side, what's come off the back of that in terms of the different opportunities for me to step into professionally, the different changes in career, the podcast, the book, like all those things, they all came off the back of that bad thing. There goes the timer, so I'll finish on that one. They all came off the back of that bad thing. So in reality, was it a bad thing for me? Or was it one of the best things that could have happened? And that's how I look back on that time. Obviously at the moment, not great. But in the big picture, on the grand scheme of things, it actually worked out well, So that's, I suppose, the most woo-woo thing I have. And it's like, again, it's not always easy to hear, because you could be listening to this and you could be going through the absolute ringer at the minute. You could have terrible stuff going on and really in a bad spot. But at least when I'm in those moments, that insight gives me perspective to know, do you know what, this is the old saying, oh, right, it's a bad chapter, but it doesn't mean it's a bad book. It's like, this is happening right now, but what happens next is really what's going to define how I look back on this. And the good news is, generally, I'm in control of what happens next, what I do with this, what's the next step I'm going to take. So that's my woo-woo belief. And that's it for the podcast. As I said, 20 minutes. We'll keep it short and sweet, but hopefully there was something in there that was insightful, valuable, helpful in some way. Thank you again, number one, to everyone for your support. I know we've been inconsistent, to say the least, with Hello Franco podcasts, episodes, all the rest over the last little while. We'll get into that. We might do another episode on like what's been going on and stuff. It's nothing crazy. We haven't had a falling out or anything like that. It's just been a change in careers, a change in direction. I'm wanting to really make sure that when we do get back into doing it properly, it's like we know where we're going and why we want to go there. We know what direction we're headed, and we want to make sure it's the direction that we actually want to go in. Make sure the ladder even is up against the right wall before you start climbing at that whole thing. But anyways, I'll love you and leave you. Thank you for watching. Please feel free, drop me a message if anything was helpful within there. If there's anything I didn't answer that you really want me to answer, let me know. I'll speak to you again soon.